On the whole, looking at the affair from all the sides, it amounts to just this. If the Northern people are content to be ruled over by the Southerners, they will continue in the Union. If not, the first chance they will get, they will rise again. Charles Sumner. This is the Reconstruction Era, in plain English, by Sammy Arnold,
Megan Schmidt,
Luke Biancoli,
Tommy Kinsler, Curtis Elwell.
So the big question is this. To what extent were the issues that brought the U.S. to a brutal civil war resolved during the period known as Reconstruction? The Northern economy was based off industry, and the Southern economy was based off agriculture. This meant a dispute since the South hated tariffs, taxes on imported goods, because they had to import everything. The North loved them because they protected their native industries. Their issue was the issue of where political power lay. The South favored states' rights over federal government, but the North believed in the opposite. There was also a lot of political dispute within and between parties like the Republicans, the Whigs, and the Democrats. The final sticking point was slavery, something the South relied on for their plantations and something the North condemned. These tensions led to a great period of attempted change in society and government, to which we refer as the Reconstruction Era.
After the Civil War, the Southern economy was left in ruins. Their land value had dropped, Confederate money was worthless, transportation systems were destroyed, and freed slaves meant the South couldn't maintain the amount of crops they produced on the plantations. All in all, the Southern economy was worse off than before the war, and the Panic of 1873 during Reconstruction didn't help. The panic started when the J. Cook and Company banking firm declared bankruptcy, and a lot of smaller businesses closed, the stock market plummeted, and thousands were out of work. As you can see, destruction caused by war and the resulting economic issues after left much to be resolved. During Reconstruction, a new South arose to face these problems. New industries started in the South. Rich white Southerners and Northern businessmen joined together to help restore the South's transportation system and start up steel and iron industries. Still, most of the South relied on agriculture to make ends meet. New forms of labor were found in the form of sharecroppers, farmers who rented land and paid for it in a share of their crop, and tenant farmers, farmers who rented land and paid for it in cash. Furnishing merchants also came about. They were people who provided sharecroppers with supplies on credit. For former slaves, these positions still left them economically powerless.
Slavery was a very controversial topic during the Reconstruction of the Civil War. During this time of Reconstruction, most white Southerners wanted to rid of the emancipation of slavery. This emancipation was a direct result of the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation was issued by President Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War in 1863. This proclamation gave more freedoms to the African American slaves in the rebelling states during the Civil War. Later, during the Reconstruction, the introduction of the 13th Amendment completely banned slavery from any state within the United States of America. However, most of the African Americans still felt that they were not getting the rights that they deserved, and this helped lead to the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship to all people born and naturalized in the USA. This amendment gave the former African American slaves the rights they were looking for a very long time. Throughout all of these amendments and all the fixations for the rights of the former slaves, there were still many problems revolving around slavery. Even with these newly acquired rights, the former slaves still had a very hard time finding jobs that they could get the money they needed from. This led to a new method of farming called sharecropping. Sharecropping was when a black family would rent or buy plots of land from the white plantation owners. Because they did not have the money, this also meant that many times the black families would have to get loans from these plantation owners. Even though the African American families made money off the crops they grew, they were still working on the white Southerner land and getting loans from them. In the end, the blacks were still treated very poorly by most white Southerners and still did not have the rights that they deserved. However, they were still better off than they were before the war thanks to the 13th and 14th Amendment. They still faced violence from certain groups like the Ku Klux Klan, groups who believed that whites were superior to blacks. This Klan killed many African Americans and their supporters and caused widespread fear within the South. Black codes also came out, limiting black rights in the South. So even though the African Americans technically gained their freedom after the war, they were still economically, legally, and socially unequal.
During the Reconstruction period, the Southerners preferred to have states' rights, where the states had all the power and the federal government had only a small and limited amount of power. The Northerners wanted to have one central government, which would have almost all the power. There were two political parties, Republicans and Democrats. Democrats were highly populated in the southern colonies, wealthy white men, while Republicans were usually citizens from the northern colonies, individuals of different race. Also, the Southerner Democrats did not like the new Republican policies such as the new taxes on tobacco and alcohol, nicknamed sin taxes, because they thought it only benefited the wealthy and hurt the poor. Radical Republicans wanted harsh punishments for the former rebels against the country. The political issues that were existent before the Civil War over how the government should be ruled, whether it be a federal government or a state government, and what things should be taxed, were still problems during the period of Reconstruction.
The Reconstruction period after the Civil War was full of issues including political instability with parties, economic issues between the North and South, and the biggest part of the Civil War, slavery. This caused tension between the North and South with their opposing views of slavery. Even with these new amendments helping the slaves, they still had a very tough time finding jobs and even just surviving with their family. These problems led to the idea of sharecropping, which gave the slaves a chance to survive. Sharecropping allowed former slaves to own a little plot of farming land and try to get their money for their crop yields. But most of the time, they would not have the money and would have to get loans from their white landowners. Many thought of this as just repackaged slavery, which the white landowners exploited. At the time, the North and South were already on bad times because of each one's economy falling apart. The South's agriculture was ruined in wake of the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed enslaved Africans. The value of the Confederate money was worthless, and the value of the Southerners' land had dropped significantly from after the war. This was the low point in the Southerners' economy. The political parties were in shambles because of the split opinion of the parties with regard to the state rights versus nationwide rights. The Northerners wanted government that is more dependent on individual state rights, while the Northerners wanted government that was more focused on national laws more than state-by-state laws. The Republican Party wanted new policies of tax on tobacco and alcohol, but these were highly debated because they only benefited the rich and hurt the poor. Taxing was a very tough issue on the Reconstruction era because of the highly differing opinions amongst the Northerners and Southerners. Reconstruction was a time of many difficult problems in the mending of the North and South. After the war, the North had to figure out a way to fix nationwide problems with the South, along with dealing with issues of the South like slavery, the economy, and political parties of the North and South. Some of these problems, like slavery, wasn't for the better in the aftermath of Reconstruction, but some, like the economy, was improved and was operational. In the end, the era of Reconstruction failed to fix the existing issues that caused and fueled the Civil War.